The debt truck on the road again.
Labor's debt and deficit disaster.
They've been on a spending spree, a spending like drunken sailors.
The helm is no place for the inexperienced.
No.
People know Labor can't manage money. They come after yours.
Since the global financial crisis 15 years ago, the Coalition has attacked Labor relentlessly for presiding over budget deficits.
No, come on, I'll have that.
It became the prism through which every political issue was seen. A surplus was something only a coalition government could deliver, they said, until it became a rather less exclusive skill on the weekend.
Look, a drover's dog can deliver a budget surplus this year. We know that.
It's all that history that makes confirmation tonight that Labor will oversee the first surplus in 15 years so politically significant, even if at $4.2 billion, the size of the surplus might not seem much to write home about. It's not the size of the surplus that's important, though. It's the fact that tonight's budget really should mark an end for Labor enduring this particular line of political attack of wearing the opprobrium of being the lesser economic managers. The budget might only deliver one forecast surplus, but the overall picture it paints of the state of the government's books is of a budget that has returned to some sort of normal for the foreseeable future after the crises of the GFC and then of pandemic. Just last year, in the pre-election budget statement, the budget in 2022-23 was expected to be $78 billion in deficit, and the deficits were only forecast to fall to around $40 billion in 5 years' time. But as of tonight, there is a $4.2 billion surplus this year, and deficits remain a fraction of those earlier forecasts right out until 2026-27. A strong economy and booming resource prices, rather than spending cuts or tax increases, might be the reason for a $150 billion improvement in the budget's position since forecasts made just before last year's federal election. But Jim Chalmers' budget strategy is designed to lock in as much of that good fortune as possible, by banking a bit over 80% of the windfall and by constraining real growth in spending to just 0.6% of GDP for the next 5 years. That not only delivers a dividend to the budget, but a political dividend to Labor, weakening, though one suspects not ending, the Coalition's line of attack on Labor's economic management. But it also means the Albanese government will not be working in an environment where the budget feels like it is in post-pandemic crisis. There are still big spending pressures like the NDIS and defence to be dealt with down the track. But Labor has cleared away a lot of the detritus of recent years, both political and budgetary, and has more room to consider what it does next on both spending and tax. Starting the task of reining in the two fastest growing areas of spending, interest on debt and the NDIS, leaves room for the government to start delivering what the Prime Minister said yesterday.
Will be a Labor budget in every sense.
And the budget is a Labor budget. There's the obvious increase in welfare payments, not huge, but something, and the big win for single parents in being able to keep their higher rates of payments until their children are 14 instead of 8. But it sounded like the government was particularly proud of a less trumpeted but crucial $5.7 billion commitment over 5 years to improve Medicare, particularly through increasing incentive payments to GPs, to bulk bill concession card holders and children.
For parents with children under the age of 16, that's an important cost. Anyone who's had kids and had to take them to the doctors knows that, and often when one kid gets sick, the rest go down as well. Once again, it's not just the dollars involved here, but the change in tone. The days of raiding the welfare budget and the sly sledging of welfare recipients seem to be over. Labor is trying to rewrite the rules for a more compassionate country. Overall, it's a budget that does a little bit for everyone, but particularly those doing it toughest, against the backdrop of what still looks like a gloomy and fragile economic outlook, where growth in the coming year will be less than half of this year, and households will be spending just a fraction of this year's consumption. The budget papers acknowledge cost of living pressures and higher interest rates are now hitting household budgets hard. Wages will grow only slightly faster than inflation. By next year's budget, people will inevitably be starting to look to the next election, and the question of what the government does about the Stage 3 tax cuts or other tax changes will be unavoidable. The 2023 budget draws a picture of an economy which will hopefully be starting to rebound by this time next year, creating more room to further repair the social contract.